Hey YouTube, Kira Twig here, bringing you all an update to my Jinzo Yugioh deck profile for August 2024. The Jinzo deck was always a fun one for me, being a deck that could completely shut down, trap cards for you and your opponent, but trap cards aren't really the main focus of this deck, but they can be used for a good majority of what the deck's playstyle is meant to do, and that is to get out our high-level machine Jinzo monsters out onto the field for us to be able to use. Definitely happy with the results of the update for the deck. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get started with the deck profile. So for the main deck monsters, we're running 3 copies of the boss monster himself, Jinzo. With this card, traps and their effects on the field cannot be activated and negate all trap effects on the field. So Jinzo just completely shuts down traps. That is, what he's meant to do. He's an easy 1-card tribute for a 2400 attack point monster on the field, but there are many other easier ways to get Jinzo on the field with some other special summon methods. But another boss monster form of Jinzo is Jinzo the Machine Menace. If a trap is face up on the field or in either graveyard, you can special summon this card from your hand. If you do, it becomes level 6 until the end of this turn. During the main phase, quick effect, you can tribute this card to special summon 1 Jinzo from your hand or graveyard. Then you can destroy all traps your opponent control. If a card is set, reveal it. You're going to use each effect of Jinzo the Machine Menace once per turn. So with the original Jinzo being more of a trap lockdown card, you just have an easy special summon option for your Machine Menace, and then being able to adjust its level to level 6 means we can also use it for some of the overlay plays to go into cards like Jinzo Layered. But the other play also being able to tribute this card to special summon your main go-to boss monster and then have a destruction play for all the traps in the field. So even if your opponent does get rid of Jinzo, you still have a destruction of all their traps on the field before this even happens. Also running 3 copies of Jinzo Ejector with this card. Its name becomes Jinzo on the field or in the graveyard. You can tribute this card to add 1 Jinzo from your deck to your hand, except for Jinzo Ejector. And it says Jinzo Monster, so plenty of search as well, thanks to this card. Then reveal all set cards in your opponent's spell and trap card zone. If there are traps among them, you can special summon Jinzo monsters from your hand up to the number of traps revealed. You're going to use this effect of Ejector once per turn, but it's set up. The reveal of the traps helps to at least get a read of what cards your opponent may have, and then the more you have in your hand, the more special summon resource you can get onto the field also. A definite 3 of just for how easy this setup can be used for either the tribute play and then also for that setup of your other cards, being able to reveal those cards and then special summon the initial card you added to your hand. I also run 2 copies of Psychic Bounder. If this card is no more special summon, you can add 1 Jinzo or 1 spell or trap that specifically lists that card as text from your deck to your hand. When another monster you control is attacked by an opponent's monster before damage calc, you can destroy both the attacking monster and this card. So the original Reflect Bounder was used by Esperoba and more or less just a, generic monster to run as more of a defensive play. But this card actually works for the Jinzo deck. If you want to run a 3rd copy, you can drop one of the effect failures that I'm running and the hand trap lineup for another spot for this 3 of card, being a search for any of these spell or traps we run, and also our main go-to main deck monsters. And then 1 copy of Psychic Mega Cyber, the retrain for the Fiend Mega Cyber. If your opponent controls more spell traps than you do, you can special summon this card from your hand. You can only special summon Psychic Mega Cyber once per turn this way. And when an attack declared on an opponent's effect monster where you control Jinzo, you can tribute this card, place that opponent's monster face up in their spell and trap card zone as a continuous trap, which will then also give you resources to be able to summon out your Machine Menace onto the field, and then using this card to have it become a level 6 monster, giving you another overlay option with the Psychic Mega Cyber. I really do like how they're called like Psychic for theirs, but it's more going off the fact that, Esperoba was pretending to be a psychic and actually just being machine monsters. And then for the rest of the main deck monsters, 3 copies of Effect Veiler and 3 copies of Ash Blossom and Joy Spring. Since we can't really rely on traps too much in this deck, we just want a more hand trap lineup that can be used against our opponent's search and monster effects. And for the spells, running 3 copies of Law of the Cosmos. Your opponent can set 1 trap directly from their hand or deck. Then, if they did, special summon 1 Jinzo from your deck. If they did not, add 1 Jinzo or 1 monster that specifically lists that card in its text from your deck to your hand. You can activate 1 in Law of the Cosmos per turn, but having a search for the good majority of the main deck monsters that we run using this card, it does give our opponent the option to set a trap, but we're going to use that trap for more of our own advantage against our opponent than actually having having your opponent even have a chance to use that trap anyway. So because of the fact that they set the trap that turn, they can't use it, but then we'll use the trap on the field as resource to get out our Jinzo monsters also. And then also running 2 copies of Cyber Energy Shock. If you control a Jinzo, target 1 card on the field, destroy it. Then if it was a trap, you can apply one of these effects. You can negate the effects of 1 face-up card on the field to the end of this turn. Or all Jinzo monsters you control gain 800 attack. Putting Jinzo at 3200 attack is definitely more of a premise on the field to be able to get over some other cards also. You can only activate 1 Cyber Energy Shock per turn, but being a quick play spell gives us more of a trap energy type of card on the field to use against our opponent. And then also same premise with our other quick play spell in the deck, and that is Everlasting Alloy. If you control Jinzo, activate one of these effects. All machine monsters you can currently control cannot be destroyed by your opponent's card effects until the end of this turn. And when a card or effect is activated that targets a machine monster you control, negate that effect. So just being able to activate one of these options, protection for any other destruction effects our opponent may try to do, or even more of an effect negation using this card also. You have back row options in this deck that can at least protect your Jinzo monsters from your opponent's other cards. And also 2 copies of Cosmos Channeling. I find that 2 ofs for a lot of these cards really do help just for the variety we run. And with this card, you can send 1 monster you control that is owned by your opponent to the graveyard to special summon 1 machine monster from your hand or graveyard. When your opponent draws cards for their normal draw, while you control Jinzo, you can declare 1 card type, monster, spell, trap. Your opponent reveals the card, and if it's a declared card type, send this card to the graveyard to draw 1 card. Its draw power going off of the psychic, quote-unquote psychic powers of Esperoba to guess the card your opponent has, but we do have other cards to take as resources, which we'll get to in a bit in the 1-0 spell lineup of our opponent's own monsters, and some of the other cards that we can set up as well, being able to use the Jinzo Layered for the taking of our opponent's monsters also. And then also for the last of the Jinzo spell cards, 2 copies of Psychic Wave. If you control machine monsters, send 1 Jinzo from your hand or deck to the graveyard to inflict 600 points of damage to your opponent during your main phase, except the turn this card was sent to the graveyard. You can banish this card from your graveyard, target a machine monster in your graveyard, send 1 Jinzo monster from your deck to the graveyard to add that card back to the hand. Search power and setup, getting that monster into the graveyard just for recycling some of our other cards. And once again, another quick play spell to use as well, even on our opponent's turn if we have to. I also run, just continuing the trend for the quick play spells, 2 copies of Forbidden Droplet, being able to send resources once again to stop card effects of our opponents. A lot of times we're not going to have the trap response option that we want, but they'll be locked down from some other cards, and then just other uses for some of our monsters or extra spells we may have in our hand. And then for the 1-ofs for the spells, 1 copy of Change of Heart and 1 Mind Control, just more resources to grab of our opponent's monsters to use for our overlays as well, depending on some of the overlays, or just resources for the extra deck. 1 Call by the Grave and the 1 Reasoning. I like Reasoning because of the fact that Jinzo is a level 6, Jector is a level 4, and Machine Menace is a level 7, and they vary for a good majority of the cards. So the guess could be anyone's, depending on which card you'll get off of the reveal of Reasoning, with the last of the spells being 3 copies of Pot of Prosperity. Search power, just for some specific cards that we may not even go into in the extra deck to grab the one we may need for our play in the deck. And the only trap I run, and this one is just to set up Jinzo, and that is Psychic Shockwave. When your opponent activates a trap card, discard 1 spell or trap to special summon 1 level 6 Dark Machine monster from your deck. So then the chain will resolve backwards, giving you your Jinzo on the field, and then stopping that opponent's trap on the field whenever they try to activate, just by discarding 1 extra resource in our hand. And that is it for the main deck. We'll now move on to the extra deck, running 2 copies of Jinzo Layered. Needing 2 level 6 monsters, you can detach 1 material from this card to target a face-up monster your opponent controls. Take control of it until the end phase, but it cannot activate its effects or declare an attack. And if a trap card's on the field, you contribute 1 monster to destroy 1 face-up card on the field. You want to use each effect of Layered once per turn, but being able to have the detach and then the tribute option with the monster we took from our opponents is the main play you want to go for. You have the take of a resource, the destruction of a resource, by using your opponent's own resource to do so. I also run the 1 Damper Vampire Sheridan, being able to use our opponent's monster with a level for this card, making it a level 6 to then overlay into it. The 1 Utopia Beyond, and then the 1 Swordbreaker, and the 1 Gaia Dragon the Thunder Charger, and the 1 Zeus for all the different Xyz monsters, with 6 being the majority for all of them. And then for the Link monsters, 1 Almirage, along with 1 Gloomy, 1 Lustrous, 1 Underclock Taker, and 1 Nightmare Cerberus, with the rest of the Link monsters being 1 Still Hat Rabbit, 1 Blackluster Soldier, Soldier of Chaos, and the 1 Nightmare Unicorn. And then as for some of the go-to plays in the deck, Law of the Cosmos, as I said, being able to set up for the fact that our opponent would want to set a trap on their field for the potential resource on the following turn, but then in turn giving us the resource needed, just having that play to be able to then use with cards like our Jinzo Ejector to then have this card for the tribute on the field of being able to add one Jinzo monster from our deck to our hand. And then with this card also being able to reveal all set cards in our opponent's spell and trap card zone. If there are traps among them, you can special summon Jinzo monsters from your hand up to the number. So then they'll reveal the card they set, and then if it's a trap, giving you your Jinzo monster on the field, and thus making that trap be unplayable on the field to begin with as well. And then they'll need that face-up trap, which is where some of our other monsters come into play for the resources that you give to them to then be able to summon out the Machine Menace. And then that makes this card become a level 6 monster, overlaying the two together to then go into our Jinzo Laird, which we can then use the detach to take our opponent's monster going for the tribute to then destroy another face-up card that they have on the field also. But that is it for the deck profile. I hope you all enjoyed. Like I said, I always like updating this deck. It's a fun take on a fan favorite of a card. And as always, until next time, please don't forget to leave a like and subscribe. And Kira, Twig out.